Now we continue with the seventh of the 8 streams of suffering, the suffering of not getting what one wants. Worldly people have unlimited desires and pursue various goals in accordance with their careers, social status, hobbies, identities, and so on. They suffer when they do not attain what they want, including wealth, position, beauty, and more. Their suffering is known as the suffering of not getting what one wants. Abhidharma Mahavipassa Sastra states, you want to attain something pleasant, but you fail to achieve what you desire. This results in various forms of suffering, which is referred to as the suffering of not getting what one wants. In my daily interactions with people, I often encounter individuals who are experiencing various pains, troubles, and worries. These issues typically stem from their inability to obtain what they desire. In today's world, where people are exposed to a wealth of information and experiences, it is common for them to have numerous desires and wants. Some feel quite sad when they see others with luxury clothing, gourmet food, extravagant houses, and expensive cars that they themselves do not possess. In contrast, Buddhists, especially those who have meditated on the sufferings of samsara, differ significantly because they are not particularly attached to worldly pursuits. If causes and conditions permit, and a Buddhist possesses such items, they may enjoy them. However, if a Buddhist is unable to acquire them, they simply accept reality and do not insist on obtaining them. In this era, we truly need spiritual wealth that provides us with the strength to confront the challenges we encounter in life. Otherwise, if a person's desires remain unfulfilled, they are likely to feel profoundly unhappy and worthless, resulting in increased mental pressure and disorientation. As you may know, there is often a gap between what you want and what you actually receive, so it is normal for many wishes to go unfulfilled. The commentary on the Benevolent King Sutra states, when things go against one's will, one experiences the suffering of not getting what one wants. When worldly individuals cannot achieve their goals, they often feel sad, as expressed in the Sutra of the Collection of the 6 Perfections. When things go against one's will, one is troubled by worries and sadness. Such worries and sadness are unnecessary. If you have studied the Mahayana doctrines, your mind will become broad and open. You will not be excessively joyful when you attain what you desire, nor will you be disheartened when you fail to achieve it. This is because you understand that everything is subject to causes and conditions. When causes and conditions come together, you can effortlessly reach your goals. When they do not, you cannot achieve your goals, no matter how hard you try. Therefore, for those who feel disheartened, Dharma is the healing elixir that can mend emotional wounds and protect them from further hurt. As long as we are mentally healthy, even if we are physically unhealthy, things will not go too badly. Of course, the happiest person enjoys both mental and physical health. With both types of health, even without wealth, social status, or material possessions, we can still lead a happy life. Conversely, even if we have good accommodations, eat well, and dress nicely every day, if we constantly experience mental torment, our external conditions will not bring us happiness. This is why many dedication prayers focus on having mental and physical health, which is an essential supportive condition for our Dharma practice. In fact, adopting Buddhist perspectives on compassion and the value of life can significantly improve one's mental health. Some individuals once led chaotic lives, plagued by challenges and difficult relationships. However, after studying the Dharma, they came to understand that everything is subject to causes and conditions. With this insight, they can easily let go of attachments to many things. The suffering of not getting what one wants. Every one of us in this world wants to be happy, yet none of us truly get what we want. For example, A family striving for comfort may build a house only for it to collapse and claim their lives. Similarly, someone may eat to satisfy their hunger, but the food could make them sick and even threaten their life. A patient might take medicine to recover from illness, but the side effects could be fatal. Soldiers march into battle with hopes of victory, only to be swiftly killed. A group of merchants embarks on a trading journey with high expectations of profit, only to be ambushed and left destitute. People all have their own goals. For example, farmers seek a bountiful harvest, students strive for academic success, and civil servants aim for promotions. Among these goals, I find the goal of a Mahayanist to be the most extraordinary. Why is that? First, it takes a long time to achieve this goal, from the moment of generating the initial aspiration to the moment of attaining Buddhahood. Second, its scope is immense. It encompasses all beings in the three realms. In comparison, those who are considered the greatest men of the world have only assisted a limited number of individuals, so their motivation cannot be compared to that of a true Mahayanist. A Dharma master once said, "The greater the aspiration, the stronger the power." That saying really resonates with me. Indeed, driven by such belief and determination, the scale of her Dharma activities is incredibly vast. Therefore, to assess whether a person can achieve something, the key is to examine whether that person has a great aspiration. If it is a great aspiration, such as a desire to help all beings who are suffering in this world, then their capacity and opportunities will eventually arise. In a short time, the relevant causes and conditions will also ripen. In contrast, if a person's thoughts are solely focused on living a comfortable life for themselves, then their actions will be centered only around this goal. In fact, the suffering of not getting what one wants often stems from narrow-minded thinking. When a person is solely focused on themselves, they become distressed when they fail to attain what they want, such as wealth and social status. With the exception of enlightened individuals, most of us shed tears primarily for our own sake and seldom for others. It is our intense attachment to ourselves that leads to the suffering of not getting what we want. No matter how much effort and energy people invest in seeking happiness and wealth in this life, they cannot even fulfill their basic needs, such as satisfying immediate hunger, if the potential for such outcomes has not been created through actions in their past lives. I have a relative who has been striving for success his entire life. Recently, I encountered him in a monastery, and it appears he still has not attained the happiness and wealth that he has been pursuing. As you can see, even fulfilling a small wish requires causes and conditions from previous lives. This applies to both monastics and lay people. Even if people share the same opportunities and external circumstances, what ultimately happens to them can be very different due to their varying merits. Even students taught by the same teacher and children born to the same parents lead vastly different lives. Therefore, we must acknowledge that in order to get what we want, causes and conditions from past lives are essential in addition to hard work. Here is a story from a sutra. Once upon a time, there were many wealthy men living in the Indian city of Rajgir. Among them, those who possessed fortunes of 100 million units of currency resided in a prestigious district known as 100 million units. In order to be included in the district, one businessman worked tirelessly, lived frugally, and dedicated his entire life to amassing wealth. After decades of hard work, his wealth was nearing 100 million units, but the businessman fell ill from overwork. Before his death, he expressed to his wife his hope that their young son would inherit his determination and become a wealthy man with a fortune of 100 million units. After her husband's death, his wife shared his wish with their son, tears in her eyes. Upon hearing his mother's words, the son asked her to transfer the businessman's wealth and property to him, promising that he would soon reside in the district of 100 million units. Trusting him, his mother gave him all the wealth and property. However, it turned out that the son used his wealth and property to make generous offerings to the 3 jewels and to help the poor. Within 6 months, he had given away everything he once owned. Even worse, the son became seriously ill and died a few days later. When the businessman's wife learned that she had lost both her wealth and her son, she was heartbroken. However, thanks to his generous nature, the son was soon reborn into the family of the wealthiest man in the 100 million units district. The richest man, who had previously been childless and was now 80 years old, was overjoyed to finally have a son. However, the newborn son exhibited some peculiar behavior. He refused to eat, regardless of who was feeding him. Concerned for their newborn's well-being, the parents searched diligently for a solution. Word of the newborn spread quickly. When the late businessman's wife heard the news, she visited the richest man's house out of curiosity to try feeding the child. It turned out that as soon as the newborn was in her arms, he began to eat. The richest man was so happy that, after discussing it with his wife, he decided to have the businessman's wife live with them so she could care for the newborn son. One day, while in the arms of the businessman's wife, the newborn suddenly spoke to her, saying, "Don't you know me?" This startled her. The newborn continued, "Do not be afraid. I was your son. Because of my merit in making offerings, I was reborn into the richest family in this district. The merit of generosity is incredible." Thus, each of us must acknowledge the significance of the aspirations and causes from previous lives. Some Buddhist speech and actions suggest that they solely prioritize happiness in this life and are indifferent to future lives, which aligns with materialistic views. Their way of living is as detrimental as that of those who prioritize only today and disregard tomorrow. Of course, this is also related to one's worldly education and upbringing. In this context, many individuals claim to accept the existence of rebirth, but they merely talk the talk. They do not truly take action to accumulate merit for future lives, which is unreasonable. Eminent masters of the past tell us repeatedly, a single spark of merit is worth more than a mountain of effort. If one lacks merit, no matter how much great effort they exert in doing something, it will not have a significant effect. It would be better to accumulate some merit. Therefore, hard work alone may not lead to great accomplishments. While working hard, you may request a chanting service or engage in virtuous deeds as a way to accumulate merits. By doing so, the power of favorable circumstances will grow stronger. What then is the point of engaging in endless samsaric pursuits? The countless efforts we have made in samsara since beginningless time, striving to fulfill our desires, have only resulted in suffering. If we had directed even a fraction of the energy spent on worldly goals during just one lifetime toward practicing the Dharma, we would already have attained Buddhahood. Even if not fully enlightened, we would at least have ensured freedom from the sufferings of the lower realms. Many taxi drivers at Larungar rise at 3 or 4 a.m. every morning and continue working until 11 or 12 at night. Their daily focus is on making money. Sometimes they do not even return home at night, instead sleeping in their cars. When they wake up in the morning, they promptly dive into work, asking, "Dear Lama, do you need a ride to Trango?" Or, "Dear Lama, would you like to go to Barkham?" Just imagine if they were to wake up at 3 or 4 every morning to engage in bodhicitta practice and diligently work for the benefit of all sentient beings. Within just a decade or so, they would attain high levels of realization. Even if they had not achieved Buddhahood, they would at least gain insight into the nature of life. However, worldly people devote all their minds and energy to meaningless pursuits. In particular, they become most attached to romantic relationships, which, as noted in a book, are like a magic trick that squanders their time, youth, and wealth, ultimately leaving them with nothing. In the end, when you face death, what have you really gained? Nothing. Even if you are a billionaire, you will not carry a single penny with you upon your death. Even if you are the president of a country governing millions of people, you cannot bring anyone with you when you pass away. Hence, the Buddha's teachings on birth, aging, sickness, death, and more are logically persuasive. These teachings are not merely imposed on us. A wise person should be able to embrace the teachings of Buddhism simply because they recognize that these teachings convey the truth. To put these teachings into practice, we should meditate in this way. Now that we understand the distinction between what is beneficial and what is not, let us abandon high expectations for samsaric pursuits that are destined to fail. Instead, we should devote ourselves to practicing the true Dharma, where success is assured. Of course, we may not be able to devote 100% of our energy to practicing the Dharma, as past Kadampa and Nyingma masters did. It is already commendable for an urban dweller to spend half a day or one day each week studying the Dharma. Some urban dwellers surprise themselves, saying, "I used to spend all my spare time eating, drinking, and playing, but now I dedicate half a day each week to the Dharma. How wonderful!" Indeed, you have improved significantly compared to your past habits. However, you only spend half a day out of 7 on the Dharma, and you are still wasting time during the remaining 6.5 days. Additionally, your half a day on the Dharma might only refer to listening to 2 classes that last a total of 2 hours. In this way, you are still far from being a true practitioner. In comparison, monastics at Larangar engage in hearing, contemplation, and meditation from morning to evening, rarely wasting their time. Most of them have a rigorous schedule. Yesterday, a Dharma student told me, we need to listen to teachings, recite Buddhist texts, give presentations, and attend tutoring sessions. My ears are so busy. It is perfectly fine to be busy like this. After all, everything this person engages in is related to the Dharma. If he can continue doing such activities and study the Dharma for as long as he lives, he will not be overly attached to worldly concerns and will feel more confident about death. Therefore, we should cherish our time. Although it is challenging to completely forego worldly concerns, it is still better to spend more time on Dharma practice. This is very important for everyone. The suffering of encountering what one does not want. None of us in this world wish to encounter suffering, yet it is an unavoidable part of our experience, whether we want it or not. For example, we do not want to get sick or be constrained by others. But when karmic retribution is at play, except for enlightened beings who are beyond life and death, none of us can escape. Even if we do not want to experience pain, we have no choice. Some people, due to their past actions, find themselves under the control of a particular ruler or enslaved by a wealthy individual. In today's world, this manifests as being employees of certain entrepreneurs. Against their will, these individuals are entirely subject to the authority of their superiors, with no freedom at all. Even minor mistakes could lead to severe punishment, leaving them powerless to resist. Even if they were being taken to their execution at this very moment, they would know there is no way to escape. Some individuals do not want to commit crimes or break rules, but due to the force of karma, they often find themselves unable to avoid wrongdoing. Some monastics strive to adhere to pure precepts throughout their lives, but in the presence of karmic retribution, it seems they have little control over their actions. Through these examples, we can understand the so-called suffering of encountering what one does not want. Take Su Dongpo, for example. Many people know that he was a famous poet, writer, and calligrapher of the Song dynasty, appointed by the Hanlin Academy and served as the minister of the Ministry of Rites. What is less known is that he was a monk in his previous life. In fact, he himself mentioned this in his poem, The Nanhua Temple. I, a practitioner, had accumulated merits and practiced diligently in 3 lifetimes, but let a thought go uncontrolled, so now I must endure karmic retribution for 100 years. It is said that in his previous life, Su Dongpo was a monk named Wu Ji. The literal meaning of this name is 5 precepts, who had 1 blind eye and was an abbot. One day, the monk found an abandoned baby girl outside the temple entrance, brought her back, had a monk take care of her, and named her Honglian, which literally means red lotus. Honglian grew up to be a beautiful girl. Once Wu Ji saw her and felt lustful thoughts, which eventually led to sexual misconduct. Thus, he broke his precepts. Wu Ji had a Dharma brother named Mingwu, who while meditating recognized that Wu Ji had broken his precepts. Mingwu then wrote a poem reminding Wu Ji of his misconduct. In great shame, Wu Ji chose to leave the world during a meditation practice. Seeing this, Mingwu thought, "My Dharma brother made a mistake. By doing so, he may become someone who slanders the Dharma in the next life, and then he will never be liberated." So Mingwu ended his own life in a sitting posture and followed Wu Ji to be reborn. Mingwu's rebirth was as the Chan master Foyin. Su Dongpo was said to be the reincarnation of monk Wu Ji because there were many suggestive signs in his life. For example, when his mother was pregnant, she dreamed that a monk came to ask for a place to sleep. The monk was quite handsome, but had 1 blind eye. Additionally, before Su Dongpo arrived in Yunzhou, monks Yunnan, Sujie, and Kong shared the same dream, in which the 3 of them went out of town together to welcome monk Wu Ji. According to his personal accounts, when he was 8 or 9 years old, Su Dongpo dreamed that he was a monk living in Shanxi province in a previous life. Furthermore, although Su Dongpo was a householder, he liked to wear monastic robes, perhaps as a habit from his previous life. Very often, he wore a monk's robe under his court clothes. People often ask, why are there no tulkus in the mainland area of China? Well, in fact, there are. Su Dongpo is one such example. From this story, we learn that Wu Ji initially upheld pure precepts and was a dedicated practitioner. However, due to negative circumstances, he had to endure suffering in samsara, which adversely impacted his pursuit of liberation. Of course, having been a practicing monk in his past life sets Su Dongpo apart from ordinary people. He was well versed in poetry and Buddhist studies, and he also demonstrated great altruism. As shown, Wu Ji's life experiences reflected the law of karma. We constantly encounter what we do not want. As Longchen states in the precious treasury of Pith Instructions, we wish to remain with family and loved ones forever. Yet it is inevitable that we will part from them. We wish to keep our beautiful home forever. Yet it is inevitable that we will leave it behind. We wish to enjoy happiness, wealth, and comfort forever. Yet it is inevitable that we will lose them. As mentioned, we wish to stay with our family and friends forever. However, when impermanence strikes, they may die, or we may have to part from them. Driven by our own karmic forces, we have no choice but to disperse to different places. What remains in the end is only memory, as the poet Li Bai expresses in his Quiet Night thought. Moonlight before my bed, perhaps frost on the ground. I lift my head and see the moon. I lower my head and I miss my home. A monastic may become deeply attached to their monastery, retreat cabin, or Buddhist institute wishing never to leave. But this thought is unrealistic. From the standpoint of both collective and individual karma, when causes and conditions are exhausted, one cannot stay any longer, let alone indefinitely. The same applies to ordinary people. When a worldly person buys a house, they may feel that it is theirs forever. However, this is not necessarily the case. When impermanence strikes, regardless of how unwilling they may be, they must accept the harsh reality and move out of the house. Everyone desires a happy life and abundant provisions forever, but when impermanence arrives, they are bound to lose everything. The garland of examples adorned by poetic fancy states, "The property in your house is shared by 5 parties. You may believe it is your property, but over time, it may no longer belong to you. Someone else could take it away. One might think, this is my wallet, but if they accidentally drop it, it will belong to someone else." Yesterday, a person told me, "I lost my mobile. When I called my number, no one answered at first. Then I called again, and someone picked it up but did not say a word. I called one more time, but the phone was turned off. Why is this happening?" I replied, "It means your phone is now someone else's property. Therefore, even if we do not want to lose our belongings, in the end, we will." These pith instructions from Longchen are very profound. Please contemplate them carefully. Regarding the suffering of encountering what we do not want, Longchen continues, "We wish to hold on to this precious human life with its freedoms and advantages forever. Yet, it is inevitable that we will die. We wish to study the Dharma with our qualified teacher forever. Yet, it is inevitable that we will part from them. We wish to be with our cherished spiritual friends forever. Yet, it is inevitable that we will separate from them. Having a precious human life with freedoms and advantages provides us the opportunity to practice the Dharma. We desire to live forever, but life is short and impermanent, and we have only a few years to truly hear, contemplate, and meditate on the Dharma." The Samyukta Agama states, "Realizing that all phenomena are impermanent and one's life is uncertain, therefore, we practitioners must cherish the opportunity to study the Dharma." Once, a person who developed wrong views toward Buddhism kept telling others, "I quit studying the Dharma." Although we are not like him, even if we wish to study the Dharma, it is difficult to say how long our precious human life will last. Disciples wish to remain with their compassionate and altruistic great teacher, but this is impossible. Sometimes it is the teacher who passes into parinirvana. Sometimes it is the disciple who passes away. And sometimes, even though both the teacher and disciple are still alive, they must part for various reasons. Therefore, the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche often quoted this verse, saying, "We, the teacher and disciples, are gathering together to enjoy Mahayana Buddhism, but eventually this will merely be a memory. Beyond this, everything will be gone." Indeed, we all want to listen to Dharma teachings in front of our teacher for as long as possible, but this is impossible. Throughout history, there has been no teacher and disciple who were never separated from each other. Therefore, when we have the opportunity to listen to teachings, we must cherish it. It is so precious to be with good Dharma peers who have renunciation, compassion, and bodhicitta. Although we wish to be with them forever and support each other on the path to enlightenment, it is simply impossible. Then, Longchen offers us a valuable piece of advice. "O my friends who are profoundly disillusioned with samsara, I, the Dharmaless beggar, urge you, from this day forward, put on the armor of diligence. For the moment has arrived to journey to the land of great bliss where there is no separation." Understanding the principle of impermanence, we should make a firm aspiration. From now on, I must put on the armor of diligence and practice the authentic Dharma, so I can reach the land of great bliss, the fruition of Buddhahood. Longchenpa also humbly stated, "O my Dharma friends who are profoundly disillusioned with samsara, although I am merely a beggar who has not attained realization, I offer you these sincere instructions." To summarize, all phenomena arise from causes and conditions. Wealth, material possessions, good health, happiness, and popularity are all the results of positive actions taken in the past. If you have previously cultivated virtuous actions, these benefits will naturally manifest in your life, whether or not you actively seek them. Khenpo Kiwang from Nupsar Monastery often said, "Those who have accumulated positive actions in the past can naturally attain happiness, no matter where they go, even if they find themselves in prison." For example, during the Cultural Revolution, many Tibetan Buddhist masters were imprisoned for over 10 or 20 years. Some masters with merit lived comfortably in prison with abundant food, while those without merit faced starvation. Thus, those with merit are like King Punyabala, who consistently experienced favorable circumstances anywhere and at any time. However, without the merit gained through virtuous actions, no amount of effort will yield what you desire. Instead, you will end up with what you least want. Therefore, when practicing the Dharma, embrace the boundless wealth of contentment with whatever comes your way. Otherwise, pursuing worldly ambitions while on the spiritual path will only lead to difficulties and reproach from sublime beings. You should strive to live a simple life filled with contentment. Otherwise, if you have forsaken everything and chosen to engage in Dharma practice, yet remain distracted by worldly pursuits and waste your time idling, you will encounter difficulties and displease the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Dharma protectors. Your Vajra peers may also scold you, saying, "This person signed up for the Dharma study group but still gets caught up in other activities. He makes all kinds of excuses and never joins the study." Some Dharma students outside Larungar study diligently. They have not missed a single class in the past 2 or 3 years. No matter how busy they are, they manage to keep up with the progress. Bravo! In contrast, some other Dharma students make various excuses to avoid attending the teachings, such as, "My friend is getting married today," "My boss is taking us on vacation," "My father is sick," or "I have a stomachache." In doing so, they deprive themselves of the opportunity to study the Dharma. In fact, deceiving others is a form of self-deception. Perhaps because he witnessed such occurrences during the degenerate age, Milarepa composed a song about this. Here is the story explaining why the song was composed. There were 2 geshes named Lodun and Darlo. Darlo did not practice the Dharma well and often spoke of others' faults using methods of Buddhist logic. Once he debated Milarepa and was defeated. Consumed by his failure, he died in anger. Lodun witnessed Darlo's death. On one hand, he felt afraid and ashamed. On the other, he developed faith in Milarepa. With great reverence, he sought teachings from Milarepa. Consequently, Milarepa provided him with instructions, and while reprimanding him, urged him not to engage in Dharma practice superficially. As Lodun became more capable, Milarepa imparted to him the most profound Vajrayana Pith instructions. Lodun then committed to genuine practice and eventually became a great practitioner himself. This story is from the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa, which you should read. Here is what Milarepa told Lodun. The Buddha, the world-honored one, imparted teachings to let go of the 8 worldly concerns, but today, those who claim to be learned haven't their worldly concerns only increased. The Tathagata established the precepts to uphold discipline so that one could sever ties with mundane affairs. But today, those monks who observe the precepts Haven't their worldly matters only grown? The Buddha taught how to live like the rishis of old, so that one could cut ties with family and friends. But today, those who emulate the rishis, don't they care about how people see them even more than before? In short, practice without the awareness of death renders any dharma useless. The Buddha offered 84,000 teachings to help sentient beings eliminate the 8 ordinary concerns. However, those who self-claim to be wise men often chase after fame, wealth, and honor under the guise of teaching the Dharma. Haven't their ordinary concerns grown even greater than before? Their actions are completely contrary to the Buddha's teachings. Once a government official told me, "Some of your monastics go to tea houses, which is against the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni." I replied, "It should be acceptable for a monastic to visit a tea house. The Buddha never forbade monastics from drinking tea. However, if one goes to a tea house to engage in inappropriate behavior, then that is not acceptable." Perhaps the official was too demanding of monastics. He viewed the mere sight of a monk outside the monastery as contrary to the Buddha's teachings. He may need to reconsider his perspective. In my opinion, when a monastic engages in self-promotion, pursues the 8 ordinary concerns, including fame and wealth, and fails to think of benefiting others, that monastic is acting against the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha established various precepts in the Vinaya so that Buddhist practitioners could generate renunciation and withdraw from worldly trivialities. However, isn't it true that today's practitioners who uphold precepts, whether lay practitioners or monastics, have even more worldly responsibilities than before? The Buddha set rules regarding monastic deportment to assist monastics in detaching from their friends and family. Yet today's monastics, who follow these rules, still seem to cling too tightly to their relationships. A monastic may call home every day and in tears ask, "May I talk to my mother? May I talk to my sister-in-law? May I talk to my sister?" If a monastic becomes more attached to their family and friends than a worldly person does, this is unreasonable. After studying the 3 fundamental types of suffering and the 8 streams of suffering, we should all understand the following. Human beings in these degenerate times across all 4 continents, especially here in Jambudvipa, are completely devoid of even the slightest chance for happiness. Their lives are consumed by suffering. However, due to their ignorance, many people do not recognize that samsara is filled with suffering. Instead, they believe they are living happy lives because of improved living conditions. As Shantideva says, "Alas indeed that living beings, carried on the flood of bitter pain, however terrible their plight may be, do not perceive they suffer so." They are unaware that behind all these advanced technologies, morality and ethics are declining, while afflictions such as greed, anger, and ignorance are on the rise, causing humans to suffer significantly more than before. Nowadays, degeneration progresses faster with each passing year, month, day, and even with each meal, morning, and evening. The kalpa continues to deteriorate, bringing increasing decay to the Buddha's teachings and the happiness of beings. Reflect on this deeply and cultivate a sense of disillusionment. Furthermore, this continent of Jambudvipa amplifies the effects of actions, making everything, whether good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, noble or trivial, dharma or otherwise, highly unpredictable. We should closely examine the reality around us and gain clarity about what should be pursued and what should be avoided. We should reflect on the following advice from Longchen Nyingtik. Sometimes reflect on what you perceive as favorable. By recognizing them as mere perception, everything you encounter will become beneficial to your practice. Sometimes reflect on what you perceive as unfavorable. By doing so, you will understand that they are essential for cutting through your deluded attachment. Sometimes, reflect on our Dharma friends and the teachers of others. By distinguishing the good from the bad, you will be inspired to practice. Sometimes, reflect on the miraculous display of the four elements. By doing so, you will recognize the effortless essence of the mind's true nature. Sometimes reflect on your homeland, home, and possessions. By recognizing them as illusory, you will evoke a sense of disillusionment with your previous perceptions. Sometimes reflect on the wealth and possessions of others. By seeing how pitiful they are, you will abandon samsaric desires. In short, by examining the nature of all phenomena in all its multiplicity, you will shatter the delusion of clinging to anything as real. Now, every class at La Rungar is studying Longchenpa's The Precious Treasury of Pith Instructions. During the group study, you should carefully contemplate these supreme instructions and put them into practice, following Longchenpa's guidance.